So good afternoon, everyone. Salut, Chloé. We are very happy to have with us Francesca Benedetto today, which is an architect, but mostly landscape designer, or let's say navigating in between architecture, landscape design, research, and urbanism. For this lecture series, we chose to invite mainly, let's say, practitioners who are let's say they are not their trajectory or their professional life or their production is not totally coherent in terms of scales, in terms of discipline, and which are somehow kind of navigating between things. And in that sense, it's a pleasure to have Francesca with us. Francesca is the founder of Yellow Office, which is a landscape and urbanism office from Milano. That does the most beautiful drawings of a landscape, let's say, that someone can find today. I had also the pleasure to work with her on several projects some years ago. She's also a professor in Harvard today, GSD. Also was teaching, I think, in the Politecnico, but also in Cagliari. And so, yeah, that's it. Thank you, Francesca. And maybe just for the students, if you have questions, and I hope you will have questions, either you just ask them at the end of the lecture, or you can also send them by chat to me or to Jacques, and then we will just translate them or just read them out loud if it's in English at the end. Thank you so much, Francesca.
Thank you, Ido. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you will enjoy the lecture. So I'm going to share my presentation. That finally disappeared. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I can start. I decided to title this lecture Emptiness. And I want to talk to introduce briefly one sentence by a philosopher, and then one remembrance that I have before talking about a series of project research and publication I did in the last decades. So this is from Aldo Gargani, that's an Italian philosopher, and he was an expert on Wittgenstein. And he said, emptiness is the dream of the city. Without buildings, construction, or pavings, the city wouldn't be there. But the city is really the great empty container that inspires the dreaming sense of those buildings, constructions, and pavings. And you can find, as I said, it's really beautiful. And I think it really fits with your topic of Descartes, so the gap. And you can find it in the issue number 8 of Terrazzo, that you probably know, the magazine by Barbara Di published in the 80s. This is from 1998. And then also to give you an idea of why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm here, I want to share with you this remember of me kid, and about the first thing that the first object I made. My grand uncle was a dentist, and I remember that really clearly, that the first object I made was a candle, because he had wax in his office. And from that point, until starting to study architecture, I was really confused. I didn't know if to study industrial design or geography. That were my passion. And then my mother told me something like, if you study architecture, you can do whatever you like. And this gap between these two fields, I mean, it's not actually true that if you study architecture, you can do whatever you do. But I think the gap and this moving between fields, it's really part of what we can do in the architectural fields as a broader discipline. So this was just an introduction about how I started. But then I want to show you as a first project. This is a research, and it was a book that I made with this artist, Antonio Rovaldi. He walked for, this is the book, he walked for around 2 years along the natural margins of New York City, so the 5 boroughs. And in 2 years ago, actually now 3, because the book was published last year, he came in Somerville. I used to live half of the year in the US because I'm teaching in the landscape department at GSD. And he came to me in Somerville. That's this small village. It looks like the Goonies village, you know, with the triple-decker houses. And he came to me and say, I want you to join me doing this book. I mapped all these natural edges in New York, but I need another layer of mapping and research. And I told him, I mean, I was really scared because you know that New York City is the most mapped city in the world, and I was scared to do something that I couldn't control when I was at your age studying, and it was 1999, 2000. The Lilies in New York from Rencolas was like an Oli book, and it was like impossible for me to do it. And I said to him, this is an impossible book, I can't really do it. And then, like I said to you before, I started to make some, take some distance from this idea that was in a way scary to me. And I started to think, after all I had studied and researched, and also small projects I did in New York, I started to think what was my idea of the city when I was a kid. And this was one of my favorite books, Daydreams and Nightmares by Winsor McCay. And I started to do this book and to do the research for it, looking at this drawing. The result was 60 illustrated maps that are part of the title of the book is The Sound of the Woodpecker Bill, New York City. And these maps follow the pictures, the photo made by Antonio Rovaldi. And in a way, like I told you before, I tried to create another story in the book, so that also to reach a different audience, but also to work with these different scales, so photography and maps together. And in a way, I wanted to explore the maps, creating a sort of archive in which a lot of ways of mapping are combined. And also I wanted to really show some the relationship between geology, infrastructure, but also temporal maps of flows. Like, for example, this is a map of all the city. You can perceive just water and soil. In a way, it's a fluid map, and it wanted to, through this pixelated effect, also talking about how the city are changing for different reasons, climate change, sea level rise, and what these margins could do. So this space that now is not even perceived and could look like an empty space. And the crosses that you see are the places in which he shot the pictures. Of course, some references are obvious, but that it didn't want to be complicated work, but really a moment of looking at the city without also this idea of knowing everything. Regarding the temporal maps, what I did, I really was interested on understanding the quantity of maps that everybody have access to. And this is about the fly routes, for example, so the human footprint, the fly routes over JFK in a precise date and hour. So here we are June 13, 2019 at 2 and 10 o'clock. And to do this work, the way in which we can have access to traffic reports on the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, it's really easy, but it's something that maybe it's not so obvious for a broader audience. And these are, for example, I'm going to show this kind of archive of different maps. So with this approach of looking at the geology, combining it with the presence of the infrastructures, this other layer, there are certain maps with a closer zoom, like this one, in which we can see the natural edge in Douglaston Historic District that is crossed by Norton Boulevard in Queens, and we can compare it also at a scale with the Point Park in Bronx that is crossed by Hutchinson River Parkway. Or there are other maps in which I decided just to show the contour lines and then the trace, like you can see, of this path that was crossed by Antonio. We are in High Bridge Park in Manhattan, or at the same way here the bathymetry at Little Bay Park that is crossed by Island Parkway in Queens. And then, of course, there are these human traces there are human traces in these natural edges. And I really loved this image with a panda-shaped balloon. And this image reminds me something that you may remember. That's the Pokemon Go things that in New York had a really success. And also I picked one day to see where the Pokemon were, and it happens like with the trading cards that if you see like all the labels, there are the frequent ones that dominates the other ones. And this is an image of when a rare Pokemon caused this kind of crazy gathering in Central Park. And I thought that was something important to remember and to place into this book. As well, other things that I mapped are the rats. Like I used the same technique, like I went to the rat portal that is available to everybody as in the maps, newyork.gov, and then I created this collage. So it's a collage of different clicks to see the presence of rats. And of course, we know that the rats are they really inhabit these natural margins. And everybody that has a common sense in New York as a cat, because it's really part of the urban landscape. What is less known, maybe for if you don't know really well the city, is the Horseshoe Crab. So this is one of the maps I really enjoyed to do the most, because the shape of this crab, that is it's the ancient inhabitant of this landscape. It really reminds me of Jamaica Bay, and everything we can find inside an horseshoe crab really informs about the ecology of this natural margin. So we have algae, we have worms, we have oyster drills, etc. So that was something that it was important in the narrative of the book, and also was in a way was inspired by the Erich Bunting work. Erich Bunting was a German Protestant pastor, and he was famous for his figurative maps depicting biblical geography. Actually, this is not his famous one. His famous one was with the world depicted as clover leaves. But I really enjoyed this one with Pegasus, and the idea of depicting Jamaica Bay as an horseshoe crab in a way was a way to give to this drawing a symbolic value, and to this horseshoe crab, and to consider this horseshoe crab like kind of gods we can look at, imagining what could be the future of the city, starting to this observation of the margins. Then we did an exhibition at school. This is the library. The library is always a lived place, so it's not an empty exhibition space. So we work with over the walls, and we can see the pictures of Antonio and the maps, and then there were these pedestals with books. And then over the glass wall of the school, we used this transparent film to print all the maps, to give also this idea of light and shadow inside the school according to the time of the day. That was something that, of course, was a goal in the language of the maps themselves. And these are the horseshoe crabs that looks like small soldiers. And most of the people at school, because they are not, of course, from all from USA, they never saw these animals, and it was interesting also to understand how to bring them, because actually you can't really get fossils from the beaches and bring it at school. But one of the curators of this exhibition was a professor in ecology, and he wrote this letter. You see that there are like some printing sheets with that's the certificate we could bring these fossils to school. And starting from that, like from school to my apartment, I want to talk to you about the library that I have that is behind me. And I think it's interesting just to talk about this idea of gaps, and how also the methodology, how the works starts. When in 2015, I went for the first time in India, because there was a conference in Mumbai, Cumulus Mumbai, about water. And then I wanted really to go to Varanasi. That's, like you may know, it's an holy city on the Ganges. And I really remember when I arrived there that it looked to live in a kind of moviola, short movie in which everything, you can perceive everything, like animals, people, you can perceive even the air moving, because it's so intense what is happening there, that these gaps, or the scale of things and the coexistence between sanctuary architecture and people and animal, it's very intense. And Varanasi, as you can see, it's like 60.8 kilometer. It's on this kind of bank that's semicircular, and there are 88 ghats, and the ghats are made by these steps, stone steps that bring you to water. And you can see there are not only religious ceremonies or events, but you can really see that this kind of topography is the backdrop of all the activities of the city. So you may see people playing cricket, or the barber, or people washing their clothes there. And what was impressive is that this waterfront looked like a mountain range in miniature, and the flow of people and animals looked like the flow of water itself over the steps. So that's talking about gaps. That idea of topography and of coexistence, then I brought in the design of this library, which you can see behind me. There is a dog bed. This is Sabia. You will see them. You will see him later. And so the idea was really to recreate a library in which there is space for different things, for altars, is lived by animals, and it has this kind of articulated topography into an idea of geometry that it's clear in a way. I showed this just to make this gap into design something that is clear, and it's also related to the experience, you know, that at least in my work is very important, and it is really part of how lots of projects came out. According to this idea of having experience, a direct experience, and also looking at the city, trying to have a certain distance, we did this short movie, and the idea was to look at the city through the run of our dog, Sabia. And the idea was really to understand the connection between nature and city, and to see how the journey of this dog could, in a way, join different public spaces and open areas into the city, creating an idea of continuity, but also an archive of the city itself. And through his run, we could see the city growing, the city of the past, and this sort of tableau vivant, because this video, it's possible to look at this video in two different ways. On one way, you can follow the run of the dog. On the other way, the dog, in this sequence of still shot, runs always with the same time, so dictate a certain time, and frame, creating a continuous horizon, what is happening behind him. And what is happening behind him is like the life of the city, and it's a map also of something that it's not always observable, that requires this kind of distance to see it. So I want to show with you this video, so then we can tell more about it. And it started with this emptiness we were talking before. So sorry, I closed it like for the end, but so to do this crazy work that we spend a lot of time, as you can imagine, for mapping the city. I don't know if it was clear, but sometimes Sabia draw axes or goes around the squares. So there is also a kind of idea of on one side creating an archive, like you saw, you know, the rocks, the benches, the trees, but on the other side also to draw through its journey the lines and the surfaces that we have in the city. And this was the map like that we did before. And after this, and of course, it's still, I think, could be considered in a way like a source, because we can see also at that precise moment was 2014, the way in which the city was changing also for the new buildings. So the way in which um, the new the development of the city was growing in a way. And the other crazy thing that we started to do was to do this kind of screenplay in which we wanted to like wrote this screenplay like a source to have to describe every condition we met encountered during this shooting. So what people were doing, but of course also the architecture, the parks, the trees, the atmosphere, and so on. This work, of course, informed in a way something that, as I was telling, all these this mapping is always related, and it becomes also projection. It becomes also a way to imagine future scenarios. So after a few years, I was invited to participate to this exhibition, Recycle Italy, Gerontiers, and here it was to design Scalofarini. Scalofarini is a railroad track in Milan. Was not part still of the competition that was done after it. I mean, I think a couple of years before, in 2018 or something. And my idea was to look at the city, to look at the spaces. The space of the railroad, the track that is on Scalofarini is on the northwest axis in Milan. You know that Milan, and maybe you know, but Milan is a compact city, but then it has this expansion. It does like the shape of a drop towards northwest. And for this exhibition, I wanted to create a storyboard in which I was imagining the topic of the urban forest and the topic of the movie theater, the urban forest and the railroad track, and the movie theaters that at the time were starting to, like all over in the world, starting to become shopping malls or something like that. And so I thought the idea of having new arenas to save the movie theaters with a more flexible program, and to bring over this railroad, this Scalofarini. I wanted that not a very fixed master plan was imagined for it, but I imagined the quality and identity of the arena in Parco Sempione, and that was a way for me to give a symbolic input or image of what that area could have been in the future. So an arena in which people, architecture, and nature could coexist. So to describe the city, to describe the scale, the storyboard was really helpful. And of course there is this, the projection of the movie of the city inside the movie theater also had a symbolic value. And the dogs run for the city, so every kind of attention or research that I used to do then becomes part of the design process itself. So what could happen if an arena is placed over Scalofarini? And these are a few images by that. I'm showing this just to give this idea of scales. In 2014, always we were invited to produce a vision for the expo site. And this expo site, because you know that the schematic drawing was done by Herzog de Moron and Stefano Boeri. That was this idea of recreating in a way a miniature of Pianura Padana, Valley, having a canal and hills and lakes on the perimeter of the site that you will see in a bit, and then having this kind of Cardo de Cumano and fields. So it was also related to agriculture. I'm sure you saw this scheme. But what I wanted to do, so the Cino Zucchi was the creator of the Italian pavilion, and they asked 5 firms to build this idea because they didn't know what to do with the expo site after the exhibition. So my idea was to create the 3rd cemetery in Milan, and a cemetery for all religion that was able to connect the monumental cemetery to the 2nd cemetery that represents Cimitero Maggiore, that represents the 2nd expansion of the city, and then with this terzo, the 3rd cemetery for all religion. The idea was to really open the city to its region, to the metropolitan area, that is an area that is inhabited by people from all over the world, and that requires burial sites, and this idea of having a multi-religious cemetery was in my mind a really useful and right for the site, because you can see really, I mean, this map it's pretty basic, but we see that Milan is a compact city, and then there are these in black, these are the railroad tracks, and the one in which you see the orange triangles is the Scalofarini. So, and the city expanded like a drop, like we said, in a way oriented towards France. That's also the history of Milan itself, Corso Sempione, etc. This is the, in a way, the gap here is it's more related to, because it looks like a master plan, but of course the way in which the idea was provided was related to these distances, these different scales of observation and connection to both the territory and the landscape. So where people from different parts of the world lives, because they work, I don't know, for example, in agricultural fields, and the historical compact city. And the idea was, so if we start, we maintain the perimeter, so we see that there are the canals and the lakes, so this idea of Po Valley, but then this linear path, raised path, that it's long 1 kilometer and was high 12. It entered into this forest. It was like meant like a rule that measured the spaces of different religions. So we started with a kind of symbolic Mount of Olives. So we have the Jewish cemetery, then the Protestant, then the atheist, then in the middle, when you see the castles, the Cardo, there are the Catholics, then the Orthodox, and in the middle, the presence of this triangular shape. It's for the Muslim, in which you see that the burial sites are oriented towards the Mecca. And then at the end, there was this forest for Buddhist, Hindu, and for Taoist. And of course, it was also conceived the space for animals, because it's part of, also then they need a place where to stay. And to do the calculation about, this is what not a real, I mean, this was a scenario, to propose a scenario, but to do the calculation about space, we consider Catholics just in the specific area and not in all the metropolitan areas. So the other spaces are more balanced. Is the Catholic is the only one that is reduced in a way. So these were the percentage at the time. I would say that this project, because also in a way it was a feasible project. I mean, I'm sure that if somebody with more power had proposed something like this, it would have been an option. Because I received some from newspaper or something, some interest in having this space, because it represents really a need. And of course, Milano at the time, now less because there is a COVID, and then there was the explosion of tourism. It was in that period in which, in a way, the city wanted to become the moral capital of Italy. So I do believe that something like this project could help to become a real, in a way, symbol of coexistence between different religions. Then I need to see the time. We have still time. So then we moved from Italy to Albania, and I chose this project to show to you because it works really at different scales, and it was a project that I really liked to do. We didn't win. We won. We were awarded with the third prize, but I don't know if then they did actually the project itself. The project was about this island in the middle of the city of Berat. Berat is an historical city that is also part of the UNESCO. It's a site, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And in 2015, Atelier Albania did this competition to create, here we are, to create a new kind of central park over this island that were afflicted by, was completely neglected by the city itself, and was afflicted by the flooding. So they wanted to understand how to use this island. So this is Berat. And when we start, then we zoom in so you will understand better. When we start to work on the city, we decide to look at all the rivers, so all the ecologies of the river, to understand really what were the resources of the geographical resources we had, and so all the ecologies from the spring to the sea. Here we are. So we are like, we have two medieval villages. You can see where there is the castle, and then there is another one on the opposite side of the river. And this Ozumi Island is the one in the middle of the river that you're seeing now, that is connected to this kind of, it's not a boulevard, it's an open space made by an Italian master plan in the 40s or something. And but the island now is completely disconnected, and in a way doesn't connect the two medieval villages. So the idea was to look at all the river and then to understand how to make really this space to be used all over time. That's why you see this kind of walkways that are raised so that if the floods come, the people were prevented to use them. And the main idea was having these three walkway to have a different relationship with the nature. And so in the central one, and the circle that you see, which there were two ramps to go down, it was to enclosure nature, to protect nature, and because there was a topography also, which most of the species were still there. And the idea was to have this, the project is titled Ozumi Panorama, because we really wanted to give it this kind of panorama from the river towards the city that now it's completely neglected. And then we have the first walkway that you see that now looks on the south, but is a north basically, but we choose to show it in this way. It's a greenhouse in which we decided to have all these species we encountered studying all the river. And then the third one that's more related to the Piazza Berat main public square. It was to have this roof for markets or for other activities related to the public program. And the way in which also they interact with the ground is different, because of course in the greenhouse you stay inside and you are in a way protected, and then in the circle you have this journey around the circle, and you can reach the beaches where we imagine there were also activities like kayaks. And then the third one, you have this kind also of amphitheater made by compressed soil. But I think what I think it's also valuable in this project is the way in which the perimeter was treated in a way. So we see that these three walkways cross these embankments, and we decided so on the city side to have a canal with running water, then a second area with the filtering of plants to clean the water, and then a pool with different heights for different purposes. And then you may have access to the pool from this stepped earth embankment. And then we can see also, you see the dots, these are these concrete reefs with using these cylindrical elements and stone to block in a way the erosion of the island. And one side was for one side, the side on which you see the circle, so towards the inner part of the river, that side was treated with plants to face the erosion, but it was a more a border in which that could change in time. And so this idea, what is the perimeter of an island in the middle of a river in which the water has its own energy and it changes the ground and the shape of the island itself. So this is a zoom in which you can see how it worked. Of course, you know that imagining these places navigated gives also different scales of perspection, and it could be really helpful, and it was in showing the project also during the presentation. This is the circle, so we see the different activities. We see that in the middle was more forested areas in a way. And the last one is this greenhouse that looked like, in a way, like a lighthouse over the island. And I think that these are like more technical drawings in a way. They show that it's not that we were doing a master plan. We were trying to create a system with the presence of these piers and with these different treatments of the edges of the island, imagining that there was not just a project of a renaturalization, but it was a project in a way also built with the cooperation of the community, and in a way that could survive in phases, and it's not like, and that left in a way the possibility to the river to mark the island always and to change it over time. This is another project always in Albania that was for a pavilion. So they used to do, Korça is a small city in Albania close to Greece, and there is a ball plus Wilson. They did their master plan. You may know that they kind of colonized the city, but there are always this kind of a symposium, usually are for sculptures, but that year they did it for, they wanted to combine a sculpture and an architect or landscape architect to create a pavilion in a park. And it was a wooden pavilion, and the idea was to work with this Japanese sculpture. I think we chose each other in a way, and we worked on this pavilion that looked like, in a way, a living diorama is the title. So you see that the structure, there is this squared structure made by this wooden grid, and then there was this main facade that was the result also of two pyramids that were creating an open air roof. Inside there was a garden, and then we can see like this kind of triptychs that were suggesting the Morava mountain skyline, but also the Ottoman architecture that really, of course, part of Albania identity, especially both in Berat and in Korça. Also, there was this gymnasium, the Bangas gymnasium, that was really important in the city. So that's you will see that this kind of pavilion does multiple things, but it has also an educational purpose. I want to share with you, before showing the other drawings, this quote, because I think that really reflects the idea of the pavilion. In a small garden, there is a large villa. In the large villa, there is a small room. In the small room, there is a big garden. It seems really simple, but it's a quote from this woman that it's not really known, but he should be considered, it is considered in like from the expert mother of Italian ecologism, and she was a partner, and she was really friends of Gianni Rodari. So that's why we can see her in as part of the book, The Grammar Fantasy, that I suggest to read to everybody. So we see the different function of the pavilion. The idea is that this kind of big wall that we have here becomes like at the school, you remember the Swedish ladder, so they can use it actually for doing sports. Inside there was, we said, the Garden of the Lights, and then during night they could use this wall for projections. And because there were really no money to do this work, it was, I mean, there were very few money because you are in Albania and it was like a temporary pavilion. So we decided to be prepared and to draw all the details, all the notes, all the screws, to be sure that when we were able to build it. And this is the pavilion. We made it in 10 days. Actually, the only professional that worked on doing this was the carpenter, because the structure was pretty difficult to do. You see the two pyramids that then create this kind of wall. But before, because I was alone there to do then there were other 5 firms to do their own pavilion. But when I arrived, I basically worked with people from municipality, and they don't know anything. They didn't know anything about it because they are not architects, and so it was really intense, but very beautiful to, like, I don't know, to draw the foundation, like how to talk with them and do together the work, like to draw a square on the ground and to do all this stuff. It was really nice. And this is the statue I was mentioning before. So this idea, I think it was really, of course, it's a pavilion that really cost anything, but the idea of working with this Japanese sculpture was really good. And we see some picture. Then I'm going to show you, going back to this idea of archive that in a way we saw in all the projects I showed to you, because we saw in Berat the idea of different relationship with the water edge and the ecologies, and it was present in the pavilion of collecting experiences and also the life of the city. Then this idea of archive, it's of course in the dog from the city should moving, and here is more declared in a way. I was invited before doing this exhibition to produce a drawing, just one, for an exhibition about Dante in Reggio di Caserta. And I did, but I was, when I started to think about Dante and to think about what I'm trying to achieve with my work, trying to combine all the different fields of like architecture, landscape, and urbanism, that was a moment for me important. So I decided to read again all the Divine Comedy and to produce 100 drawings. And the idea was to deconstruct the Divine Comedy according to categories. So architecture, people, objects, atmospheric agents, everything, like to see every element alone, and to give also the possibility to create different scenarios. So every element, in a way, you could have a certain autonomy because you have the singular objects, a singular natural things, and I think because now we really need, in a way, also to write again what's the sense of history. It's a very complex topic, so the idea of reading again history and let it be interpreted in a different way was very important for me. So I went back when I was a child. That's something that I always do, and I thought that there was this play, this way of playing that was called Names, Things, City. I don't know if you played. You need to, like, it was a way to learn the language, but when we were kids, but I think all over the most part of the world was used. Like you needed to say one name according to the first letter. So it was divided in really cities, names, objects, flowers. Then everybody had different versions, and you used to pick one letter, and then you had to write what you knew about that letter. And so the idea was the exhibition, the drawings were suggesting this way of looking at the Divine Comedy through this visual archive. These are the 100 drawings, and what also was important for me, going back to this idea of lights and of emptiness, was to try to print all the drawings that were done with through the use of gradients, etc., to make this like a luminous wall in which not only you can see whatever you want, but it always changes according to the place in which you stand up the wall. And it was, I mean, if we see in picture, it's not really so luminous as it was. But I think that gave this idea of looking at something that everybody had an idea that was written and rewritten so many times, to give this fresh visual experience, and always different because of the lights. I'm going to, I think this is a small video. Yes, it's just, this is a test for the video that I did, but still it's not, of course, the same that to look at the drawings directly. So these are other zooms. So we see here character, the lion. It's like we saw before, San Miniato al Monte. And this is the effect of this psychology of frames. So I may have a last thing very fast to show to you. And then I think I finished, because maybe there is time if there are no questions. Otherwise, I can stop now.
No, please continue, Francesca.
Okay. So the last project I want to show, it's an exhibition that I did last year, and also did. I mean, I didn't do the manifesto, but I'm showing that anyway. It was this event about climate change for Design Week, and I worked in the last years at school doing this seminar that is titled Constructing Visual Narratives of Place. And students, they do documentaries and storyboards. And one of the ideas is to understand, starting from Kevin Lynch, what is the image of the city, so, and also the role that experience play and so on. The fact is that what is happening in the US city, or it's a little bit different from what is happening here in terms of coastal erosion and the way in which the city will change fastly. And so I worked also on this idea of sea level rise and climatic migrants, and it's something that is changing and will change really fast for the city on the coastal edge, of course. And so when they asked me to do something, I had this idea ready to create this kind of scenography with waves. And then I worked with Violaine Bouet, that is from Normandy, and she's a seaweed designer. And so we create, so starting from a drawing in a way that I think it's something important to see, that the drawings, they really are related to what you do, even when it's a small thing. So starting with this idea of creating this scenography and always this tableau vivant, and then to discover something at the end, we made this scenography with waves and seaweeds, and the experience. It was interesting because, you know, the seaweed, they have a smell, they have these colors, and the idea of moving towards the waves was something interesting to face during an exhibition designed. It's something, the event that last 10 days was to bring some experience of different scale, at the scale of people, and even at the scale of an event, like could be the design week. And of course, at the end, there is sad closing lecture. My musa. I think I have finished. It was too fast. Are there any questions? Or?
Thank you very much, Francesca. It was very long. Huh? I mean, it was passionate, but just in terms of time, I think the students will have to go in a few minutes. But please, if some of you have questions, please just write them to me. Otherwise, I can ask you something, or just a remark while the students are kind of heating up. I think one of the things that always fascinated me about what you do is that, and this is a very French thing, is that when you do landscape design or landscape architecture in France, there is something, let's say, it's not so much about drawings. You need to work with real materials, with living animals, with living plants. And so there is something that somehow kind of turns away from representation, also from architecture. And this is this kind of basic opposition that architects are kind of fascinated by representation and by the static, and landscape designers by the living. And so the let's say the physical world, but kind of out of the drawing systems and all that. And what I really find fascinating, let's say, beside the fact that you draw and the beautiful drawings themselves, is this idea that somehow, this is what I feel, my interpretation, that the kind of most radical act of design comes from a kind of a description or abstraction of reality, or from the representation of the what is around you, and that is somehow through the drawings, through the description, becomes a radical design. And I just wanted to ask you if, yeah, probably you don't know how to answer that, but where does it come from? And how is it maybe related to a very kind of Italian way of dealing with description or something. Is this related to that or not?
I mean, of course, it could be something, it could be a cultural thing. And then I think that, I mean, is this idea of jumping from one field and another one, it becomes also a necessity when the interests that you have are like pushing in different directions. And so you may find, that's why I told before I started a lecture saying that I didn't know if to do the industrial design or or geography. I think that in Italy, at least until, I don't know how it is now, but now I think it's more specialized. But I think there was this idea that architecture made the city, but it was also a political thing, a social thing. We have a country that is all very fragmented, which in what is also my family experience, I have this perception of differences between regions, and there is this idea of journey, etc. So I think all of these stimulus. Oh, I miss you. Are you still there?
Yes, yes, of course. Huh?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not seeing you anymore. So I think it's the result of all these inputs. And in a way, I feel that the landscape feels, it's so universal in a way that could, all my interest, all my curiosity can stay in that frame, because it's very flexible and it is all over the scale. So that's what I think. But I'm really interested in a direct experience. I mean, looking at the city, to me, it's like the first stimulus, like the first thing that helped me to be abstract, to see what's going on outside.
Okay, thank you so much, Francesca. I think we are in terms of time, it's really over.
Okay.
If you can just let's say one last thing, if you can just incline your screen so that we see the bibliothèque. Is it possible?
Yeah, you know why I'm not doing it, because there are Lego over it.
Ah, yes.
So.
Okay. Ça va. Okay.
It's not completely my fault, this one. I have Taj Mahal.
Thank you so much, Francesca.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure, and see you soon now, and bye bye to students as well. Huh? Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.